Hello everyone, my name is Jennifer and welcome to Best Kept Plans. Today's video is going to be a look at all of the books that I read in December 2024. If you're interested in seeing what I read last month, please stick around. As I said in my introduction, we're going to be talking all about the books that I read in December 2024. I can't believe we're doing my final monthly reading recap for 2024. I'm actually filming this video on December 31st. I just finished my last book of the month and decided it was the perfect time to just dive right in and talk about these books. The first book that I read in the month of December was a holiday romance, and that was A Holly Jolly Ever After by Julie Murphy and Simone. I read this duo's first holiday romance last December, and I remember it being very steamy, so I was anticipating that going into this read. I will say this was definitely less steamy than their first holiday romance. It's involving a Christmas film being shot, and just the concept of the Christmas film is just very silly and funny to think about. I didn't go into this book and really don't go into any holiday romance expecting to find a 5-star read. And I didn't with this one. I rated this 3 out of 5 stars, but for what it was, I enjoyed it. The next book that I picked up was The Nightmare Before Kissmas by Sara, Raasch. I'm probably saying that last name wrong and I apologize. I was fortunate enough to receive this review copy from Bramble, so thank you so much to them for that. I really had no idea what I was getting myself into when it comes to this book, but it was not what I was expecting. To me, it's more so a familial story with a subplot of romance. It is a fantasy. There is a holiday world that normal people don't know about. I did like the familial story that was being told here. To me, the romance was much less important and it didn't detract from the book overall, but I also didn't think it's what made this book for me. And I ended up giving this 3.5 out of 5 stars. After The Nightmare Before Kissmas, I decided to give holiday books a bit of a break, and I picked up one of my 24 books in 2024, which was Women Talking by Miriam Toews. I primarily listened to the audiobook, and I just found it to be a really interesting look at the bravery and heroism and strength and resilience of women. This is not a story for the faint of heart. The things that are described in this book are horrifying. And knowing that this is based on real life events is awful to think about. But I do think this author did such a great job in how she framed this story. And she really brought the power to the female characters, which I think is the best way to write something like this. I really am so glad that I ended up reading it, and I rated it 4 out of 5 stars. Next, I wanted to pick up a nonfiction book. I had a goal of reading 6 nonfiction books in the year 2024, and this book was my 6th one, and that is Atomic Habits by James Clear. I read a nonfiction earlier this year called The 12-Week Year that was more along the lines of a self-help nonfiction, and I actually really enjoyed it and think a lot about that book and the things that that book talks about, and I was hoping this was gonna go even further towards gearing me into a place where I'm focusing on myself and working on myself and building better habits for myself as I finish off 2024 and lead into 2025. I do think that it has some good information in here, some interesting ways to think about things and frame things for yourself. I don't know that I think the topics, the discussions in this book have stuck with me very much. I actually feel like I think more about the 12-week year than I do about Atomic Habits, but I am glad that I read it. After the last two books, I was on a bit of a roll when it comes to reading challenges, and so I decided to pick up You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty by Akwaeke Emezi, because this was also on my 24 books in 2024 reading challenge, and this was the last book that I needed to read to fulfill that challenge. I didn't love the trope in this book, which made it a bit more challenging for me to get behind from a romantic perspective. And I don't really want to reveal what that is because I'm honestly not sure if it says it on the back of the book, but it's not a trope I've actually read before. And it's a trope that when I hear about it, I feel like I'd actively want to stay away from it. And had I realized that that trope was in this book, I don't know that I would have picked this to read for myself. That being said, I am glad that I read it in the sense that I do like Akwaeke Emezi's writing, and I would be very interested to read something else by this author that doesn't have this trope in it. I did give this 3.5 out of 5 stars, mostly for the writing style. After that book, I actually ended up looking back at my most anticipated new releases for 2024. And as it turns out, I only had 2 more to read every single book on that list. So I decided to pick up Daydream by Hannah Grace. I did primarily listen to this book as I was doing a lot of cleaning and decluttering, and I really enjoyed it. I really liked both of our main characters. I related to both of our main characters. I liked the way that Hannah Grace paced that relationship, starting out as acquaintances, building to friends, and then beyond. I also liked the way that Hannah Grace dealt with the third act conflict in this book. I ended up rating this 4 out of 5 stars. Really enjoyed this. Next, I decided to pick up another holiday romance. I actually read this on Christmas Eve, and that is My December Darling by Lauren Asher. How cute is the cover of this? It's adorable. I will say I liked this novella a lot more than I thought I was going to. I actually really liked our characters in here. I did think that our female character was beating herself up a little bit too much over a past relationship, but I did enjoy the relationship in this story. I loved the inclusion of text and things. That always works really well for me in romances. And I ended up giving this 3.5 out of 5 stars. After My December Darling, I did pick up the last of my 2024 anticipated new releases. And this book also fulfilled my fantasy challenge for December. I read 1 fantasy book every single month of the year, and that is A Tempest of Tea by Hafsah Faizal. I pretty much went into this story blind. It was really, really good, and it was actually my favorite book that I read in December 2024. This one was a found family heist adventure story, I guess I'd say. And I loved that. It definitely gave me some Six of Crows vibes. This one involves vampires. There's definitely twists and turns at the end. It definitely leaves you off in a spot where you're hoping for the next book. And I'm really hoping that the next book is coming out soon, though I haven't looked into that at all. I'm, again, just very glad that I read it, and I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars. The last book that I read in December was Love Naturally by Sophie Sullivan. I have an arc for another one of her books, which comes out in February 2025, but it is the second book in an interconnected standalone series, and Love Naturally is the first book. I enjoyed both of our characters. I could relate to both of them in different ways. They definitely have a very fast moving connection because this book takes place over the course of about 2 to 2.5 weeks. And for me, I don't necessarily love that in a romance, but the chemistry and connection and writing style kind of makes that okay. This was feeling like a 4.5 out of 5-star read for the majority of the book. But in the last few chapters, our male main character does a little bit of an about face, not in terms of the romance, but in terms of like his life goals. And that just didn't make sense to me. And it's not what ends up happening in the end. So I feel like including that in there wasn't even really necessary and just overall kind of took away from the story for me. And with that, I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. That's all of the books that I read in December 2024. I didn't have a 5-star read, but that's okay. I'm super happy with the 1 4.5-star read that I had, which was A Tempest of Tea. This, again, is definitely my favorite book that I read in December. I'd probably say that my second favorite is Love Naturally. And then when it comes to a third favorite, I'd probably give it to Women Talking. And that's gonna be it for this video. I hope that you all enjoyed this video. If you have read any of the books that I talked about, please put a comment down below. I love chatting with people about books. And as always, everyone, please be safe. Bye-bye.